The world has always looked to London for creative, political and social inspiration, but in the 1980s, under Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, the City of London was in economic despair. Many neighbourhoods like Shoreditch, Brick Lane and Hackney were deserted, allowing artists to take ownership of the desolate streets. Abandoned buildings and blank walls became the canvases of this new wave of artists, and the drab streets were filled with vivid paint, sculpture and colour. Many failed to notice what is right in front of them, colouring the streets, on trains, walls and derelict buildings. Unassuming and inconspicuous, art is all around us, hiding in plain sight.
Graffiti, street art, it's out in the real world, it's out in that environment where it could be missed.
Art created in a public space, this type of art is created for broader audience. And this type of art encounter different audience, because very often audience that does not expect to see art and usually they are passerbys.
The future of art is up in the air. With the rapid changing nature of street art that is challenging the traditional art scene, the future of London's art world is unknown. Street art could be pushed out of London, or it could take over and change the shape of the art world in London altogether. The decision is dependent on how the public decides to react. Should street art be valued in the same light as fine art, or is it just vandalism that should be forced out of London altogether?
Heaps of stigmas with it, and then it's like, there's the old idea that, oh, it's a gang-related thing, oh, yeah, they're just like fighting with each other, kids fighting or people fighting, and then stigma that it's not real art in many ways. You know, anyone could do that. You know, go out and write a word, I can't even read it. Out Hackney Wick Way is like an industrial area, which is always a breeding ground for new artists. If you're in an industrial area, you're less likely to get busted, you can practice your stuff.
You know, this was decoration, trying to make something nice in the ghetto.
Over the years, street artists' hard work greatly enhanced the cityscape of these London neighbourhoods, adding commercial value and piquing the interest of wealthy citizens. Outside of safe havens like Shoreditch and Hackney, their only options are to be labelled a sellout by making legal commission pieces, or to bear the criminal consequences of being unpaid illegal street artists.
If you sell out, if you start making money, if you start working with corporations or groups or brands or whatever, like, you're not a graffiti person anymore. You're not a graph artist. You wouldn't even be called a graph artist typically, you know?
Artists who do commission pieces where they are paid to paint advertisements or promotions on buildings in a legal manner may try to hide the fact that they have turned corporate so as to avoid the judgment of their peers.
So there are graffiti artists who are very adamant that they're graffiti artists, who get to do paid commissions. And then there's street artists whose work might have a commercial value, but they're still getting up at 3 in the morning and doing illegal activity. They're doing vandalism and no one's paying them necessarily to do it.
Some artists choose to be on the wrong side of the law because of the thrill and authenticity that surrounds the illegal graffiti scene. Showing your work in an exhibition or guided tours of the street art scene comes off as too commercialised and mainstream for many traditional graffiti artists.
Having a commercial job on the side there or being bought by someone to do that is kind of like skipping all of that. You're making money on it. It's not really about being seen or getting your art up. It's about the cash on the side, how much cash you can get from how big a company, and then, you know, in the end, is it really the same thing? It's kind of not.
I know a lot of artists that wouldn't listen to the law. I think that's quite an exciting place to be when you're kind of on the verge.
Many graffiti artists walk the line of legality, with the general perception among the street art community being that art and expression come first.
It's the difference between someone who will get up in the middle of the night, go out with like 4 or 5 people, cut barbed wire over a fence, jump into a train yard, get past dogs, get past guards, and put paint up on a train, have their people, have their art, have their style thrown up there, and there's massive risk.
Trying to push it to the limits and trying to provoke and see how far they can push the limits.
I always laugh, like, why do they paint it back grey? Why do they paint it back brown? Why do they paint it back all these boring ass colours? Do something nice there. Like, what's the difference? Like, why wouldn't you want to have it nice? I mean,
free expression is something that we should all aim for. But the law should enfranchise people. There should be laws to help people express themselves, not what it's there for at the moment, which is hinder and control and contain who and what can be said.
Being told that you can't feel something, you can't say something, it just makes you want to say it more, doesn't it?
Artists are caught in the crossroads of acceptance in the fine art world or acceptance within the community that they came from. The future of street art is unclear as artists struggle to find their place in the art world. Even some of the most notable street artists struggle with legality. Banksy, one of the world's most iconic street artists, is known for his politically and socially charged pieces and risky illegal stunts. His battle with legality has pushed Banksy to shroud himself under a pseudonym while still managing to capture the world's attention.
Everyone knows Banksy, even if you know nothing about art, not even street art. This name is already in the mainstream and everyone is talking about him because his projects are so important and bear these messages which everyone can relate it to today.
The thing that Banksy did was he made it political. He made it pressing, he made it interesting because he was saying something with words and with images that he really didn't need to focus that much on the technique. It was more about expression of idea. So he separated himself from that, and that's why he's somewhat accepted in the fine art world. Banksy in the beginning, street artist, teenage dude, trying to say something about the world around him. What's different about any other fine artist?
And obviously Banksy is a fascinating example where he sort of questions the fine art distinction and when you can bring it into a gallery and giving it market value and all of those things.
In a way, I think it's far better just to refuse the distinctions that we get given from this position of authority, you know? Let graffiti be graffiti, and if street art is low-class art, well, I think that's problematic, you know.
I think the question of what is art is such a dense, convoluted, it's been asked for so many years. I think it's a near impossible distinction. I'd say that, there's been this idea that if it can be shown in the gallery, it's art.
It is widely thought that fine art is defined as a piece that can be displayed in a gallery, auctioned off and hung on the wall of an affluent art collector. Street art defies this notion. The very name necessitates that it live outside of the gallery.
Some people are going to say that's art because it's this kid who's gone out and decided that he didn't like that grey wall, decided that he didn't care if he got caught, or wanted to kind of see if he did or didn't, could get away with it, and that's hugely artistic.
I suppose art is pointless, it's functionless, it's meaningless, it's just you making something and putting yourself out there. But I guess in terms of limits, I don't think there are any limits. In terms of traditional graffiti, I mean, yeah, maybe it's not considered fine art because it's not in a white cube gallery, but that's not to say it's not valid at all.
Someone taking a can, shaking it up, and changing the world around them, that's art, that's dope. It's so cool. So people will eventually appreciate that the same way they appreciate all fine art.
Conflicting opinions on street art and where it belongs in the art world raise the question of whether or not it is a valid medium of expression and should even be granted with the title of art. Many believe that it lacks the correct context or degree of expertise to be placed alongside works of more traditionally celebrated artists. However, there is an equally adamant argument from a large population that graffiti deserves the same level of respect as any piece by Monet or Picasso. Is it the location and price tag of the piece that makes it fine art, or the expression and message? For street art to become fine art, it is the art world that must start shifting its definition of what fine art truly is.